All right, so these are the steps to solve equations with radicals. The first thing we're going to do is make sure the radical is isolated. What does that mean? Make sure that the radical is alone on one side. Whenever we're talking about a radical, guys, we're talking about a root. They could tell you like rad of x plus 1 is equal to 6. So this is a radical. And to isolate this radical, I'll have to take 1 the other side of the equation. Say minus 1 here, minus 1 there. So this one cancels. I'll have the rad of x being equal to 5, something like that. You know what I mean? So this is what I mean by isolating the radical. We have isolated the radical. Now we're on step 2. We need to square both sides of the equation to undo this root. So I'll square this and square this side. So the root and the square root would cancel. The root square root cancels, and then you're left with x is equal to 5 squared, which is 25. So we're at this point. So they're telling you solve the remaining equation, and then lastly check for extraneous solutions. These extraneous solutions would be like maybe it doesn't make sense. Like, for example, if I get x is equal to 25, if I substitute this x is equal to 25 in this equation, would it make sense? Let's see. So in the place of x, I'm putting 25. So meaning the root of 25, if you add 1, do you get 6? That's a question mark. I'm substituting in this equation, which I made up in my head. But the root of 25 is 5, and 5 plus 1, yes, gives you 6. So we are correct. So sometimes you might substitute and it doesn't make mathematical sense. So in that situation, there will not be any solutions. Okay, so let's apply all this knowledge in examples. I'm going to call this example 1. So the first step is telling us to isolate the radical. So this radical is already isolated. So the first step is already done. And now they're telling us to square both sides of the equation. So m plus 5 roots is equal to 2. So if I square both sides of the equation, I'll square this and square this. Now, this root here would cancel with this square, right? Because these are opposite operations, so they cancel out. And then I'll be left with m plus 5 is equal to 2 squared, which is 4. So this is a one-step equation, really. So to leave m, or to get the value of m, I'll subtract 5 both sides of the equations, minus 5, because this is a plus 5. So to undo the plus 5, I'll subtract 5. So plus 5 minus 5 cancels, and I'm having m is equal to negative 1. All right, so let's look at example 2. Again, if you look at example 2, the radical is already isolated for us. There is no coefficient. There is nothing else we need to do. So step 1 is already done. So let's move right ahead to step 2. Square both sides of the equation. So we're having 5m minus 1 root is equal to 13. So I'll square both sides of the equation. And then I'll realize that this square root and this square will cancel. And I'll be left with 5m minus 1 is equal to 13 squared, which is 169. So at this point, I'm going to undo this minus 1. Add 1 both sides of the equation. This one minus 1 would cancel, and I'll be left with 5m is equal to 170. At this point, I'll divide 5 both sides of the equation. So m is equal to 30.